Christy Vega-Gluch from Phoenix Cake Company, and I am going to be showing you how to make a fondant heel. Specifically, a stiletto heel. Yes, all you ladies out there who can't walk in them, like me, I'm going to teach you how to make this in edible form, which I think is more impressive anyway. Plus, you won't, trip and hurt yourself. So anyhow, you can use any color fondant you want. I use fondant. I don't mix it with gum paste. This is regular fondant, pre-made. You can use marshmallow fondant if you have it. I would just make it a day ahead of time. I actually use one that is store-bought already, so it's very convenient that way. So you want to start working your fondant. You want to get it soft. You want to knead this in your hand. The warmth of your hands is going to break down the sugar, so it's going to get it real soft for you. You want to keep kneading this, get it pliable. Sometimes if your fondant's too soft, you want to add some tylose powder. Tylose powder is used primarily for making gum paste. It's a drying agent. This is also going to make your stiletto very nice and sturdy. So you want to sprinkle in, this is approximately, I'm using about, it's probably a little less than a golf ball size. And this can vary depending on how big you want your shoe, how little. Obviously, if you're going to do a smaller shoe, you want to use a smaller amount of fondant. Now, and I'm not going to use all this right now, but I'll show you in a minute how we're going to pull away some of this fondant. So you want to sprinkle some tylose in here. You put just a little bit of tylose in there, and I kind of do this to feel. As you put the tylose in and you work it in, this fondant's going to get a little bit stiffer. It's getting pretty sticky right now, so you want to have some vegetable shortening. This is just, any regular vegetable shortening you can get from the grocery store. You want to get that rub a little bit in your hands as you're working this. Okay, so once you get it nice and soft, try to get rid of any of your cracks. You're going to start with the ball. And then with this motion in my hands, I'm not putting any pressure up here towards the top. So you're going to continue to roll this. You want to, as you can see, I'm not going to do a fondant heel that big. I kind of want to do a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to tear away a piece, your extra. And like I said, this is just, you kind of just have to feel this out, and the more you do this, the better you'll get at it. So you want to roll this very bulbous here at the top, and what you're doing is you're gradually tapering this down to the point, to a stiletto point. Now you don't want to do it all the way. If you get it to about right here, this is good. And then you want to get a skewer. It's not quite a bamboo skewer. It's not a toothpick. It's kind of an in-between. It's a little bit longer. So when you have this more bulbous here and you're going to thin this out, you're going to stick the skewer in, pointy side first. I didn't wet this yet. You want to keep rolling this. If it starts getting a little too long, you just want to tear off a piece. And once you get it in there, I actually have it about 3/4 of the way. I want to leave this bulbous part untouched. I'm going to dip it in some water. Now this is going to help the fondant adhere to the skewer. You're kind of pinching it towards the end there. You can tweak this in a little bit, but right now we need to work on the heel part. This is a ball tool. You're going to push this in you're going to submerge this, almost the whole entire top part of the ball tool is totally submerged in the fondant. And while it's in there, you're going to move this around. And what I'm doing is I'm basically thinning this out. And if it's cracking, that's okay, because you want it to actually be a little bit on the dry side, because that will help with stability. So after you've hollowed out this heel a little bit, you're going to tweak the stiletto part. And you want a gradual thickness. So that looks about right. So once you get it to this point, you're going to, oh, one thing very important. You need at least 2 inches, 2.5 inches of the skewer showing at the bottom. This is actually going to be beneath your cake. This will help with stability. So in transportation or whatnot, you have this in your cake. You're not going to see this part, obviously, but that will keep the shoe from toppling over. And we don't want it to topple over after all this hard work that you've done. You want to get a styrofoam block. This one is one of those green foamy styrofoam for floral. You want to wrap it in some plastic because you don't want the green fuzzy stuff to get on it. These are little bullnose pliers. They have a little spring to it. I love these. If you can get these, this is great. Because this is what you can use this. This is a multi-purpose tool here. So you're going to grab the skewer at the very edge where the heel's at. You're going to stick it in. Now kind of look at this and make sure you're getting it in even. So at this point, you can finish tweaking it, give it look all around, make sure it looks good. The tylose that we put in here actually helps this from holding up. This part right here, I typically do these heels at least the day before. If you find like your heel, if the skewer is coming up and it's popping up through the top, you can always get a little piece of fondant and kind of patch it up a little bit. This part right here, say if the toothpick was showing or the skewer, this is going to be completely covered, so it doesn't really matter what this looks like. It could be messy, it's okay. If you're still having problems with this part staying upright, say if you didn't put enough tylose in or if your fondant was too soft, you can also you want to get some cardstock, something that has some stability to it, not a piece of paper. And you can prop this, depending on how tall your heel is, you kind of have to eyeball this, but you're going to make somewhat of a tent. And that will support the heel and it will let it dry. Once the heel has dried in position, before this, one of the important things here is this slope. If you look at a normal high heel shoe or a stiletto, this part needs to be going down. And it's kind of hard to visualize this. If it helps you, pull out your own stiletto shoe. If you don't have one, borrow one from a friend. Google it. I always Google stuff, so it's nice to get a visual of the slope, the angle. This does have to be dried ahead of time, 24 hours, if not 2 days. You want it nice and sturdy for this next part. So I made one yesterday. Now this is pretty hard. It's, like I said, it had the tylose in it. And I never push this down, just in case you don't want all your hard work to go down the tube. So I'm going to take this one out. And I'm going to push this one in. Okay. Now at this point, we're going to do the sole part of the shoe. I freehand this. I just roll out fondant and I just kind of play with it. It helps sometimes to cut a template. To make the sole part, you can do it freehand. Sometimes I make a template. Now for this, you want to use this regular flimsy copying paper, not cardstock, because what we're going to do is we're going to play around with this template, and this is actually going to give us the form of how the sole is going to lay on the shoe. So when you do that, you can visually see how this fondant sole part is going to lay, which is very important. So I cut this out ahead of time, and I played around with it with the size, and this isn't precise. Like I said, these are all, very custom. So one of the things to remember when you're cutting this template out, this section right here, right at the top where the heel is going to go, you want to actually exaggerate that a little bit. And you'll understand why in a little bit after we cut this out. This is actually going to act as a support system for the back of the heel. I'm going to get my fondant out. And this also has a little bit of the tylose in it. When you're rolling this out, you want to actually roll it out a little bit thicker than what you normally would. If you roll it out too thin, it's just going to wind up tearing on you. This is just little powdered sugar. Pick it up every once in a while. Make sure it doesn't stick to your table. And this, like I said, is pretty thick. I don't know if you can see how thick that is. It's about big enough. Get your handy dandy X-Acto knife. And we're just going to cut around the template. After you have it cut out, you want to make sure and put your extra fondant in a bag because it will dry out very quickly. Seal that up. Get a little bit of water. As you can see on this one, the toothpick started popping through, so I just plugged it in with a little piece of fondant there. One of the, what makes a good decorator or cake artist is covering up your mistakes. I know how to do that very well. And no one will ever see this. But now you guys all know. If you ever see my fondant shoes, yeah. Major cover-up job sometimes. So once that's wet, we're going to lay this on the top. And you're going to bring this up at the top just a little bit. Like I said, this is why it was important that you cut this part out a little bit bigger than what you normally would. So this is the part, like I said, this is why you have to do this heel at least a day ahead of time. 2 days is great, because it actually gives you some stability to work on. Now the sole to me needs to be a little bit pushed out here. And this is once again the cardstock. The other thing too, if you have the plastic on here, I forgot to put this down. Put a little bit of powdered sugar on there so it doesn't stick. So you want to make sure that that's looking the way you want it to look. I'm going to push this up a little bit further. And when you have it up here, you're actually, what I'm doing with my forefinger and my thumb, I'm actually thinning this edge out a little bit. And I'm curving it in at the same time. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a support system that's actually going to have a finishing piece over the edge. Hopefully that looks good from your view. Can't see this very well going backwards. And you want to try to balance this on all sides. Like if you see the back, you kind of want to make sure that this is even on both sides. So that looks good. Then I'm going to add once you have that in position, I actually do this part a day ahead as well. This is probably like a 3 or 4 day process. It's going to take time, but it's going to look awesome. Everybody's going to wonder how you did this. So I actually did another shoe earlier just for time purposes and to have this dried. This one, I did the heel part yesterday. The sole of this I actually did about 4 hours ago. So it's, if you have the tylose in there, it's still stiff enough where you can work with it. In a pinch, I've done it before where, you know, I can start playing around with this one, and you just have to be very careful. But ideally, you want to dry, you know, let this dry for a couple hours. Get a fan in front of it, you know, dry it out even quicker for you. So this part was dried, like I said, I bet you need at least 2 to 3 hours, preferably. If you can do it the day before, that would be great. So once it's at this state, once again, I'm just getting water and I'm brushing the edge, going about halfway down. This is going to act as the glue. You're going to get some pink fondant or whatever color you're using. And this is a part, like I said, you're going to have to play with this just to see how much you need. But we're creating a nice finished edge for this, and this is also going to help build up the heel. So I'm starting with the ball of fondant, about the size of a walnut, maybe a little bit smaller. And I'm tapering this on one side, and then I'm turning it over and tapering it on the other side. And you want to get a really fine taper on each end to a fine point. I usually eyeball this, so once what we're doing is creating a finished piece. It's not quite long enough, so I'm just going to keep rolling. You want your two end points, you want it to finish tapering right about halfway where the shoe's at, maybe a little bit lower. I'm going to keep rolling. So see how it's equally draped on both sides. The water that you put on is acting as the glue. You're gently pushing this down. So you want it to secure it. Now, when you have this on, at this point, once again, best tools you have are your fingers and your hands. So you're going to gradually pinch this, and what I'm doing is gradually thinning this out. As I'm doing this, I'm kind of pushing down on the sole part that's been thinned out. So depending on how high up you want this, you can just keep pinching away. Try not to, you know, get an irregular shape. You want it nice and even. I want to thin this out a little bit more. And you keep playing around with this until you get it to the point where, let's see, I think we're almost there. You want both sides to kind of go in a little bit. And you have to balance it out on each side. You want to mimic each side, make it look right. So same technique, a lot more bulbous here in the middle. Once again, you're going to have to play with this to make sure you're going to have to keep measuring this on the shoe to make sure to see where you're at. You're going to put a little water down. Once you get it, let's see, it's about right. The 2 points are going to meet up with your other 2 points from the top. You're going to thin this out a little bit more in the center. And right where the edge is going to be, you want to even thin that out a little bit more because you want it to kind of hug the edge of that. I'm going to stick that on. Once you have it to where you want it and it looks good, at this point you can embellish it however you want. You can add, you know, royal icing. You can do all kinds of stuff with this. These are pre-made little flowers that were made with royal icing. You can also add little dragees. These are little silver balls, and these are so tiny. Instead of putting one on at a time, I get a little bit of water, dab it in there, and you add it on the royal icing, and just it adds a little sparkle to it, which is really nice. And then this is where, like I said, it's nice to cover up your imperfections. You can cover, you know, any little cracks or anything that you see. You can cover that up with royal icing and more fondant flowers. This is the final product. It's good to go on your cake. Once you get this done, like I said, you're going to do this 2 or 3 days ahead of time. This is another one that I've done previously. You're going to have this skewered, and then you just set it right. It should just set right onto the cake. Your icing, if you're having a hard time getting it in, if there's fondant, you just want to push that skewer down into the cake. So this is how you make a fondant stiletto shoe. I hope you had fun watching this. If you can't walk in them, ladies, like I said, you can make them with fondant, and it's much more impressive. Please visit our website for more inspirational cake ideas, tips, and tricks. Thanks for watching.